the greatest words ever said, our final speaker. Kind of up there with like, take my plane. That's another one that I've okay. So look, what I want to share with you is just some ideas around this disruption thing and what it's doing to the sales environment and how you as a sales leader and a sales practitioner need to experiment, to use Jill's word in the prior presentation, to experiment with a second sales motion. Many of you are already doing it, but the importance of this, I think, is going to become increasingly prevalent in your world because of what's on this slide. This is all the technology disruption that's going on. And what it's doing is it's changing the rules in industry after industry after industry because these technologies are lowering the barrier to entry for the next generation of startups in a way we've never seen before. I mean, cloud computing is essentially allowing a startup to deploy software globally almost for free. If you started a software company in 2001, you had to raise a couple of $1 million worth of venture capital to buy the computers, to buy the Oracle stack, to buy the tools, the whole thing. Aaron Levy starts Box in his dorm room as a sophomore at USC with a credit card. And it's a global company. And by the way, it was global from the beginning, okay? Mobile things now let you interact with somebody who, 1.5 billion people on the planet, almost literally for free, right? You don't buy their phone, you don't pay for the internet, and you don't pay their cell bills. So basically, these capabilities, none of the established enterprises have this. In fact, for an established enterprise, these are more expensive. Because if you have a data center, and you have call centers, you have all this stuff, and then you add a whole new stack based around cloud and mobile, and then you think about how the heck do I integrate the two, it's actually worse rather than better. And so what's happening in industry after industry is the incumbents, the iconic brands in that industry, are under attack from startups that they've never heard of, and frankly, they're just getting their asses kicked because these guys are playing for free for something that they've spent a lot of money on going forward. So this is Airbnb just raising hell in the travel industry. It's our friends at Uber doing it in transportation. It's Netflix. It's Tesla. It's all these disruptors. And then, by the way, if you put out this stuff, all these mobile phones and all these websites and Twitter and all these different social sites, they give you tons of log data about what users are doing. This is something we never saw before. When anybody acted in the past, it was gone. You know, what's happened in the past stays in the past. Well, not anymore. Not anymore. There's a log file. Politicians are discovering this. You know, there's a log file. And basically, marketeers are discovering this and saying, you know, if we could get all that data together, which you now can, because that's become virtually free, then you can apply machine learning to this stuff, and you can start seeing patterns that we've never seen before. And this is why Amazon is so darn effective, and this is why Google can put the right ad in front of folks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And all of this is optimizing this digital world that we're all involved in. And the final coup de grace is when the machinery and the manufacturing people say, and by the way, I put a sensor on the machine, so now the sensors are giving me the same log files, and now I really can optimize anything. Well, okay, God bless, but so what, okay? So I think the so what is, if you're an established enterprise, in other words, if you are a target customer for anybody in this room, you're probably re-engineering a big part of your world right now. Your board of directors has said to your CEO, what's our digital strategy? And the CEO is not going to be left out in the cold, so the CEO is jamming that down the organization. What is our digital strategy? And I don't care what industry you're in. If you're in retail, if you're in automotive, media, whatever it is, you've got to have something new to fend off these velociraptor startups, right? And they're not startups anymore. We're talking about Amazon. We're talking about very big companies coming after you. Okay, so what? Well, the so what is a whole bunch of money is going to be taken away from its traditional moorings in the annual budget, and it's going to be put to work in a new place. A whole bunch of money that was not in play is coming into play because we have to make this response. That's both good news and bad news. Bad news first. The bad news is if you have a good customer relationships that you've had over the years, they've kind of always earmarked the money for you. It's kind of like your go-to play in your quota game. That earmark is probably not gone, but it's been squished. It's been hammered. Because they have to take the money for the new stuff away. So the bad news is your traditional sources of funding through the annual budget for the people we know, this is the third or fourth or fifth year we're doing business together, that's getting suppressed because they're putting a whole bunch of new money in play. Now, the good news is that money is coming from everywhere. That money isn't just coming from the person's department that you normally call on. That money is coming from the CEO on down. So there's a lot of money in play. And the other thing that's good news here is these companies don't know exactly how they're going to spend it. They're looking for trusted advisors. They're looking for some better strategy for how to spend it. So the point is, it's an opportunity-rich environment, but it is not lending itself to the traditional sales cycle. That's the problem statement. A lot of money out there, available to you. You're as legitimate as anybody to go after it, but your standard sales processes, your standard product line, not lined up for it yet. So how would you prosecute that opportunity? The idea behind this is pretty straightforward. The customer's thinking about you, they're thinking about these technologies, and they're thinking mobile, cloud, big data, whatever. Where am I going to put this in my company? What am I going to do with this new technology? And there's three sort of kind of crawl, walk, run that you can do with new technology. The crawl is just look. Just use it to replace the sorry old stuff, right? Just spend it on something don't build another data center for God's sake. Put it in the cloud, okay? Don't insist that everybody buys desktops and laptops. Do it on a mobile. I mean, in other words, you can just literally save money. Okay? And by the way, a bunch of this cool new technology will get bought, and that's the first use case that many customers will do with it. And it could be in your area as well. Your new preventative maintenance sensor or whatever is on a machine that you sell, whatever, it could just initially be used to take the cost out of the servicing process. But sooner or later, somebody's going to say, that's just not enough to fight off the digital disruptors. We have to modernize our operating model. My favorite example of this is if any of you are in New York, most of us anybody here take Uber, just by any chance? Yeah, right, okay. So, or Lyft. I realize if you're having the Travis moment, you might be taking Lyft. But the point is if you're a taxi cab driver, it's like, what in the world am I supposed to do? Well, that's what Arrow and Curb and in San Francisco, Flywheel are about. They're taking the new digital technology. You can call a cab with Arrow. You can see it coming. You can summon it from your phone. You don't have to call the dispatcher. You can watch it coming to you, and you can pay with your mobile phone. So that is the Uber operating model. But it's the old business model. Travis doesn't buy cars, and Travis doesn't pay drivers. But the San Francisco cab company and the New York cab companies do. So they haven't changed their business model. What they're doing is they're modernizing their operating model so that you will consider doing business with them. Now, if you're of a certain age, below a certain age, you probably wouldn't consider doing business with them. But if you're above a certain age, and I definitely qualify in that thing, if I can get the Uber experience from a cab company, I was once picked up by somebody in Uber in a Ford 150 truck. And I thought, I think a cab might be a little better, okay? So the operating model idea is not a bad idea. But then the big idea is, and this is the crawl, walk, run, the run idea is, wow, we can take this new stuff, and with what we know about our industry and what this new stuff apparently can do, we can maybe go into a big new opportunity in business models. Well, those are three very different value propositions, kind of crawl, walk, and run. If you think about that from the point of view of, okay, which one should the customer be after? Well, not should they be after. As a sales team, you need to ask yourself the question, which one do we think they're after? And you have to be a little careful here because people often talk a little bit bigger than they actually are going to act. So you have to figure out, what are they really up to? But if what they're really up to initially is just use the new technology, spend the new money to just take cost out of my existing operations, that's basically going to be lined up pretty much with the relationships you already have, if it's touching your world. If the infrastructure model idea is don't really mess with how the money is in the annual budget this year. Just spend that money in a different way. Spend your money more digitally, less analog. So that's the first one. And so it's very much of an efficiency story. You'll have to sharpen your pencil. Price will be a key issue. nothing that will surprise you. But if you go to the operating model, if they're saying, no, we really do want to change the way we do work around here, now you've got to engage with people that do the work. And these are people that you don't normally, your company has normally not sold to. These are people that use the benefits of your offers and products and services inside their company, but you don't sell to them. You sell to the people in the green area, but their users, who are your customers' customers, if you will, are in the blue area, and traditionally they just used the stuff and took it for granted and they didn't change, but now they're going to change. Well, if they're going to change, you need to understand, well, how are they trying to change? You need to understand what is their plan for the new operating model in order to line up your sales offer to have it make any sense and be able to compete for this money that is now floating around, but it's floating around, it's going to be tied to an operating model change project. You got to find out what that is, okay? And you're talking to people that you've never called on before. In fact, your current customer, who's in the green area, is actually scared of you calling on these people because they're afraid you're going to go around them. They're afraid you're going to deposition them if you're not careful. So it's a very challenging moment. And then if you're going to go to the top of this thing, we're talking about companies now starting new businesses or little skunkworks businesses that they want to grow into new businesses. Now you're talking at the very top of the company, and frankly, your sales team probably can't get that meeting. You probably have to bring in your most senior executive in your company to get that meeting. And that's a different play. But interestingly, the difference between that and normal closing is, normally you bring in your most senior executive at the end to close the deal. In the top one of this triangle, you bring in your most senior executive at the beginning to open the deal. Because what you want to have at the top of that thing is to find out if that company, your target company, believes what your company believes. And if the CEOs can talk to each other and say, we agree this digital disruption, we have a common point of view about it, we have beliefs about it, and we think this is a great way to invest in it. And by the way, this is what sales, Mark Benioff does this better than anybody in the whole world. He's like a CEO whisperer, right? But he'll sit down and you'll listen to this stuff go back and forth. But you end up, the people that grab on, and not everybody buys Mark's act, but the people that grab on believe what he believes. And then you can prosecute the deal. So you have to start with your heavy gun, not lead. Well, my point about this is three different sales sort of motions, if you will. And it's kind of a crawl, walk, run. And the point about it is, as you go up the triangle, the deals get riskier, but the money gets much bigger. And it's about an order of magnitude per layer. So if your normal sale is $100,000, in the blue it'll be $1 million, and in the red it'll be $10 million. And I'm not kidding. I literally mean an order of magnitude each time. Because think about how much change you're putting on the table, and also think about how much return there is to the customer if it works. If it works. Nobody wants to start a new business. If you're the CEO of a company, you don't want to start a new business with a $100,000 purchase. You want to start a new business with a $10 million purchase. You're serious. You want the board of directors to back you. So it really does work that way. So, okay, great. So that's kind of how money is moving around in your customer's world. How do we tap into that? And what I want to say is that the lower one, the one on the bottom, is, I think, the classic sort of close this quarter transactional sales motion, the sort of thing that, frankly, at least when I went to sales training courses, every course I ever went to essentially, qualify, do they have budget, who's the decision maker, when are they going to make the decision, blah, 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 who's the competition, and you kind of work through that sales cycle. That sales cycle is absolutely fit for purpose for what I'm going to call sales motion one and that infrastructure sale. You're selling within people understand your product, they have budget for your product, they know what it is, etc. When you're selling into the blue area, they do not know what it is, okay? This is a different sales motion. The people you're selling to are not specialists in your product line. The whole application is emerging. Now, they have some very strong ideas about it. They're probably working with a consultant or an advisor who's giving them strong ideas about it. But this is not the play that we've been running before. So we call that sales motion two. And in the next two slides, I'm just going to kind of go back and forth between these two motions. At the very top, it's a version of sales motion two I call 2++, because frankly, it's a one-off sort of holy smoke, we're going to kind of invent the world. I actually think it's not a very productive place for most sales teams to play. because it's amazing when it happens. I mean, literally, it's transformative to your company if you get one of these deals, but they're not common. But I think that the other two, I think what's happening with the new digital disruption is green was common, blue and red were not. Now I think green is still common but marginalized, and blue is the new green. If orange can be the new black, I guess blue can be the new green, right? Okay. So so I think I want to do the blue and the green against each other. So this is the green sales motion. If this is not familiar to you, you're in the wrong room. Okay. Or maybe you just started sales like yesterday. This is a classic sort of transactional sales motion. You modernize the infrastructure model. In other words, I'm selling into the person that's been buying my stuff, and I'm giving them the latest new thing, as opposed to this just challenge of modernizing the operating model. So it's a really different idea. Infrastructure, got that, budgeted fine. Operating model, got to get a whole new people on board, change management, all that kind of stuff on the blue side. On the green side, annual contract value is the key. What did you sell this quarter and this year? In Sales Motion 2, it's total contract value. And the first year will not be the big year necessarily. The first year, they may be doing phase 1, or they may do a pilot in phase 1. So it may be that ultimately they're going to spend 30 or 40 or $50 million, or whatever it is, but, or maybe it's 10 to $20 million, but in the first year, they might only spend 500,000 to $1 million. Okay? So if you do the ACV game, you can take that first deal, but you'll probably not get the rest of the deal because you made the deal too small. You didn't keep the aperture open for the rest of the spend. You didn't set up the entire. So you want the deals in the blue are set up by saying things like, well, this is probably a $10 to $20 million journey. This first part that we're going to work on next year is maybe 2 to 4. And what you're doing is you're just kind of setting the customer's expectation about how much budget do I have to go and recruit over the long haul. And by the way, if you do well with the 2 to 4, why would they switch? They're going to want to give. They're not going to want to have another competition to give the next money to somebody else. They're going to give it to you. So it really is kind of one deal, but it's in tranches. But if your metrics say I only reward ACV, and this year I actually took an ACV hit in order to save some equity with the customer to get next year's bigger deal, then you're going to actually teach your salespeople and your team not to play Sales Motion 2. So CIO is the executive sponsor. This is particularly for tech people. It's kind of your normal functional buyer. But as I said, the CXO is the sponsor for changing the operating model. Even if you're not going to sell your product to the CXO. You're still going to sell your product to who bought it last year. But the budget that's going to fund your product is not going to come from their budget. It's going to come from somebody's much bigger budget. And that's why you need to connect with that bigger budget owner and then make sure they link back to the person that you normally sell to, and that the order will come here, but the budget will come from there. So instead of qualifying for budget, because that's what you do in Sales Motion 1, does my connection to the company have budget, you're actually having to create budget. And you're helping build a narrative. And basically, your normal contact is not teed up to make this narrative work. Your normal contact inside your target company's company is considered to be part of the past, not part of the future. They're not entrusting your normal contact to this digital future stuff. So, and by the way, your normal contact doesn't want you to go around them, or at least doesn't want their contact to go around them, depending on where you are in the chain. So you typically have to bring in other people from your company to have dialogues with other people in their company around creating budget. And so where is the ROI? You need this business value kind of analytics, that sort of stuff that the companies have. And most sales companies that are doing Sales Motion 2 have some kind of that Salesforce Ignite, Spark, those kinds of things that they do. They're all about creating budget, helping people rethink their way they're allocating resources in this new digital world. So, so it's harder at the beginning. Interestingly, at the end, it's easier. Because once they've actually decided you are a trusted part of their world, that they're following that you believe what they believe and you're working together, they do not want to give that money to anybody else. And even when the purchasing agent comes in and wants to hammer your deal, your sponsor, now your CIO, your green sponsor doesn't have a lot of power against the purchasing agent, but your blue sponsor sure as hell does. Your blue sponsor is 1 to 2 levels higher in the market, higher in seniority than that purchasing agent is. So you don't have anywhere near the price pressure in the blue that you have in the red, because the blue is like heart surgery. You know, you don't normally like go say, heart surgery, boy, can I find a coupon to get a discount if I do it this Saturday? You know, that's a green idea, it's not a blue idea, okay? So instead of being a trusted vendor, you're getting this thing called a trusted advisor. And when you hear that trusted advisor thing used a lot, but this is what it's for. A trusted advisor helps you chart a future that you are not prepared to specify yet. A trusted vendor acts within the guidelines that you've already established together. So a trusted vendor is doing what you expect of them. A trusted advisor is helping you shape your expectations. So it's a bigger role. So closers win on the green stuff, collaborators win on the blue stuff. Part of this blue world is your company can't solve their problem alone. It takes a village, it takes an ecosystem. It's going to take multiple people working together around a common architecture and a common vision for change to make the blue thing happen. So your ability to orchestrate that ecosystem, to work with other companies, to work with other divisions within your own company is really critical to make a blue thing work. In the green thing, it's like, get the hell out of my way. This is my account, right? Account control is a green idea. It's not a blue idea. Bottom-up pipe gen. If you're looking for lead gen, how do you do lead gen? Well, bottom up. We're going to have a huge pipe funnel. We'll do trade shows. We'll do email drip marketing. We'll do all these high-volume things. Terrific way to detect opportunities that are already qualified for budget. Not a good way to get in touch with anybody in the blue. The blue is the opposite. The blue you actually starts with a conversation with a senior person, typically at a thought leadership event where there's like 24 people at the entire event. Okay? So it's the absolute opposite of green market. Lead generation is totally different. And instead of talking about a 3 to X coverage ratio, I did 3 times as much stuff at the beginning of my pipe that I'm going to close. Here it better be very close to 1 to 1. These things do not show up in pairs or groups. They're like unique opportunities, and they need to be cherished and nurtured. Even quarter to quarter, you would nurture one of these deals. So instead of events leading to on-site presentations, it's more likely that you had some kind of workshop or dialogue or something, and then they came to your executive briefing center, and they brought 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 people from their company, because they're kind of like going to Mecca. Your company is part of this new vision, and they want to make sure that they test that vision. They want to make sure that their colleagues hear it also, because this is all about, do you believe what we believe? We're united in our beliefs. Whereas the other one, it's like, no, we're evaluating a product, for God's sake. Stop being so romantic, right? Just get at it, right? So product and solution marketing, kind of the meat and potatoes of Sales Motion 1. But over here, it's identity and industry and thought leadership marketing. It's so much about where are things going? What are the trends that matter the most? How do we keep from being distracted from all the trends that don't matter? It's about having a clear point of view. And your customer will if you show up with your customer with a clear point of view about their problems, even if you're wrong, they still value what you did, because they're having trouble getting clear feedback from inside the organization because too many people are trying to protect too many turfs and too much budget. So they're not getting very clear signals from inside for Sales Motion 2. So you are a credible person, and if you get it wrong, they'll tell you, no, you don't understand. It doesn't work that way. It works like this. Then you have to course correct and say, wow, that was really valuable. Let me go back and rethink what our role might be now that I better understand what's going on. And in Sales Motion 2, that kind of dialogue is normal and desirable. In Sales Motion 1, it just wastes time. So finally, at the end of this thing, if you have a technical product in Sales Motion 1, you need a technical person, a system engineer, to help explain it to the customer. But what you need with Sales Motion 2 is something that looks much more like solution architects. How do people understand how to pull these things together? What are you pulling together here to make this thing work? 2 different sales motions. You can see that they're very different. And I would submit to you that if you think, well, let me go to the last slide. I want to just talk, last slide is just, so what does that imply? What does that imply? Okay, first thing is 2 different pipelines. We said it, right? One's a high volume pipeline that goes through an early qualification stage, typically stage 2. Does it go from suspect to prospect or prospect to actively pursued opportunity, that kind of stuff? Classic Sales Motion 1. For Sales Motion 2, as we said, it's much more ambiguous at the front. If you try to shove that lead into a pipe and nurture it through some sort of email drip marketing, you'll just kill the opportunity dead. It's a little bit like, I was thinking of marrying you, but I sent you an email instead, right? It's like, just doesn't quite work, okay? It's different stage, okay? Portfolio management. This is a really important problem for everybody in the room. If you have this situation in your patch, how much of your resources are you going to spend on sales motion 1 versus sales motion 2? I'll give you what I think is the normal right answer. 80% on sales motion 1, 20% on sales motion 2. If you get much higher than 20% on sales motion 2, you'll just have too much unpredictability in your total overall ability to deliver. But 20% gives you the kind of opportunity that if you win one of these deals, you'll blow out your year. You will be you'll be the top or second top leader at Sales Club that year. Your team or yourself. You will blow it out. Okay? But it's a little bit like home run hitting versus hitting for batting average. So I think it's a kind of an 80-20 rule there. Now, if you're going to play this game, because there's such different games, you cannot let any salesperson put a opportunity in the CRM system and not declare sales motion 1 or sales motion 2. Because everything you do, once that thing has been declared, you're going to play the game differently. So you have to force the account owner to call the ball early. Are you playing sales motion 1 or are you playing sales motion 2? And you may not, it may be one of those situations where it could be either. Fine, pick one. Do not tell me you're playing both. Because what you'll do is you'll end up spending a lot of my sales motion 2 money, but at the end of the day, you'll come home with a sales motion 1 deal, and it's like, I can't afford that. Sales motion 2 is incredibly expensive. Sales motion 1 pays the bills. So do not try to fake this. If you call it sales motion 2, by the way, I will give you a ton of support. But by the way, you owe me a big deal, okay? So that's the deal there. Resource management, that's the whole point. The resources that you need for sales motion 1 are largely in place. They're largely understand the game. The resources you need for sales motion 2, you're going to get, quote, creative. And you're going to have to talk about a big deal opportunity, a big customer, to get your management, and not only the sales management, but the product management, the service management, the other organizations in your company, to make that extra, to go the extra mile. So if you're selling something to CIOs, our CIO will talk to your CIO. If you're selling something into the manufacturing group, the head of our manufacturing will tell you about our manufacturing, et cetera, that kind of stuff. Sales enablement. Look, there are people that can do both of these sales motion. I'll bet some of you in this room are actually quite good at both. Most people are not. Most people on your team are not. They're going to be better at one than at the other. Actually, the people that crush it in sales motion 1 are usually not very good at sales motion 2, but the irony is often people who are marginal at sales motion 1, because they're not really good closers, are actually quite good or potentially quite good at sales motion 2 because they're much better collaborators. So you're going to have to, my point is just get people to play to their strengths and partner to their weaknesses. Don't ask somebody to do an unnatural act. It just doesn't work. 2 different cadences. The sales motion 1 is, linearity, close during the quarter, close during the, I need to see traction, and I see a lot of predictability, and we should have a sales process that makes the process visible so that early in the quarter I can see which deals are going to make it, which deals aren't. I can move resources to where they're most needed. All of that's great for sales motion 1. Sales motion 2 is still more of an art. So you're going to have to entrust it to people that you trust, and you're going to you still want visibility, you still want accountability, but it's not going to fit into the cadence of sales motion 1. Service and support mix, same thing. Now, the thing with this thing is, if you're going to do sales motion 2, it has to be a bigger deal. It's such an expensive sales motion to run. That's why it has to be at least 10x your normal transaction as the deal size, or it just frankly doesn't qualify. You just should say, look, I get that it might be there, but if there's not that money, if there's not this kind of money at the end of the rainbow, it's not a good opportunity for our company at this time. Geography, so the closing one is, how do you organize sales teams? Geography versus industries, it's a 1-2 punch. Geography is great for sales motion 1, and industries is great for sales motion 2. So when you're doing your 80-20 thinking, think about that. So both motions are key to success, The point I just want to make is manage them separately. So with that, I want to turn the stage back over to Tim because I think he has a cocktail hour that he wants to announce to you. Thank you very much. Thanks.